It was late October when Jan, Marco, and Alyssa decided to spend their Saturday evening investigating the rumors about the old amusement park on the outskirts of town. The park had been shut down for over 2 decades after a series of mysterious accidents and disappearances. The townsfolk whispered about an ancient curse and a malevolent clown, but no one knew for sure what had happened. As they approached the entrance, the setting sun cast long shadows over the rusted gates. The once vibrant colors now faded and peeling. The eerie silence was broken only by the creak of the Ferris wheel in the wind. A chill ran down Jan's spine as they crossed the threshold into the abandoned park. "Do you guys feel that?" Marco asked, rubbing his arms. "It's like the temperature dropped 20 degrees. "Just your imagination," Alyssa replied, though her voice wavered slightly. She pulled her jacket tighter around her. "Let's check out the carousel first." The carousel was one of the park's main attractions back in the day. Now, the horses looked like grotesque, skeletal figures, their paint chipped away, revealing rotting wood beneath. Jan could almost hear the distant echo of carnival music as they approached. "Look at this," Marco said, pointing to a large, weathered poster stuck to one of the stalls. It advertised the amazing laughter show featuring a clown named Chuckles. He's supposed to be the one haunting this place. Jan squinted at the faded image of the clown. His painted grin was unnervingly wide, eyes twinkling with a sinister mirth that seemed to follow them. "Creepy," she muttered. They moved deeper into the park, passing the bumper cars, the funhouse, and the empty food stalls. Each step seemed to amplify the feeling of being watched. Shadows shifted unnaturally, and strange noises echoed around them, but whenever they turned to look, nothing was there. "I swear, I just saw something move over there," Marco whispered, pointing towards the old roller coaster. The structure loomed over them like a skeletal giant, its tracks twisted and broken. "Probably just a raccoon or something," Alyssa said, though she didn't sound convinced. As they neared the clown-themed funhouse, the air grew colder, and a thick fog began to roll in. Jan could barely see her hand in front of her face. "We should have brought flashlights," Marco muttered. Suddenly, a deep, guttural laugh echoed through the fog. They froze. The laugh was low and menacing, sending chills down their spines. "Okay, what was that?" Alyssa asked, her voice trembling. Jan took a deep breath. "Let's just get this over with. We need to find some evidence and get out of here." They stepped into the funhouse, the door creaking ominously behind them. Inside, the walls were lined with cracked mirrors, distorting their reflections into grotesque shapes. The air smelled of mold and decay. Marco found an old light switch and flipped it. Dim, flickering lights illuminated the room, casting eerie shadows. "Why did it have to be clowns?" Marco muttered, looking at the various clown mannequins scattered around the room. Their eyes seemed to follow them, smiles twisted into sinister grins. Suddenly, one of the clowns moved. Its head turned slowly towards them, and its eyes glowed with a malevolent light. "Did you see that?" Jan whispered, her heart pounding. Before anyone could respond, the clown sprang to life, lunging at them with outstretched arms. They screamed and ran deeper into the funhouse, stumbling through the maze of mirrors and corridors. The laughter followed them, growing louder and more frenzied. It echoed off the walls, making it impossible to tell where it was coming from. "We need to get out of here," Alyssa cried, her voice high with panic. "Over here," Marco shouted, pointing to a narrow passageway. They squeezed through the tight space, the laughter still ringing in their ears. As they emerged into a larger room, they found themselves surrounded by more clowns. These ones were even more grotesque, their faces twisted into expressions of pure malice. In the center of the room stood Chuckles, his grin wider than ever. "Welcome to my carnival," he said, his voice a low, menacing growl. "I've been waiting for you." Jan felt a wave of dread wash over her. "What do you want?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Chuckles' eyes glowed with an unholy light. "I want to play a game. If you can escape my funhouse, I'll let you go, but if you fail, you'll join my collection." He gestured to the clowns around them, and Jan realized with horror that they were all real people, trapped in twisted, unnatural forms. "We don't have a choice," Marco said, his voice grim. "We have to play." The game was a nightmare. They were forced to navigate a series of increasingly bizarre and dangerous challenges, each one more terrifying than the last. The clowns stalked them relentlessly, their laughter echoing through the halls. Jan felt her resolve weakening with each passing moment. She could feel Chuckles' malevolent presence growing stronger, feeding off their fear. "We can't let him win," Alyssa said, her voice shaking. "We have to keep going." Finally, they reached the final challenge. A room filled with mirrors, each one reflecting a different version of themselves. In the center of the room stood a large ornate mirror, its surface swirling with a dark, otherworldly energy. "This is it," Marco said. "The only way out." Jan took a deep breath and stepped towards the mirror. As she reached out to touch its surface, she felt a sudden, overwhelming sense of dread. The mirror seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, drawing her in. "Don't do it!" Alyssa shouted, but it was too late. Jan felt herself being pulled into the mirror, her body twisting and contorting as she was sucked into the dark void. The last thing she heard was Chuckles' laughter, echoing through the darkness. When she opened her eyes, she was back in the amusement park, but everything was different. The sky was a sickly green, and the rides were twisted and broken. The clowns were everywhere, their eyes glowing with a sinister light. Jan realized with horror that she was trapped in the mirror world, a twisted reflection of the real world. She could see Marco and Alyssa on the other side, their faces filled with fear and desperation. "We have to get her out," Marco shouted, but there was nothing they could do. The mirror was a one-way door, and Jan was trapped forever. As she watched her friends walk away, their figures growing smaller and smaller, Jan felt a cold hand on her shoulder. She turned to see Chuckles, his grin wider than ever. "Welcome to my carnival," he said, his voice a low, menacing growl. "You'll be staying here for a long, long time." Jan felt a wave of despair wash over her as she realized the true horror of her situation. She was trapped in a nightmare with no way out. And somewhere, in the real world, Chuckles was waiting for his next victims.